There are legitimate reasons why you're not building muscle. It's not just because you're not training hard enough. It's not because you're not doing enough volume. Those could be factors, but there's legitimate reasons why things stop. And there's scientific reasons why things come to a halt. So maybe you've been making good progress, and then all of a sudden, even though you're getting stronger, your muscle growth has stopped or something has slowed down. So we're gonna address these things one by one and give you solutions for each one depending on what really is the problem. This is part 2 of a series. The first part that I did was talking about how muscle actually grows, the 6 different ways that trigger muscle growth. So you haven't watched that, I recommend you watch that. Now you can watch it after this video. It doesn't really make a difference what order you do. So I linked out to that in the description. Anyhow, let's jump through. The first reason you're not building muscle anymore could be that you've just burned through your newbie gains. Now, this is something that people talk about a lot. Your newbie gains is where, like when you first start a new resistance training protocol, you get all these cool gains. But there's more to it than just like what meets the eye, right? There was actually a study published in 2024 that looked at newbie gains, and it was pretty interesting because they had novice lifters, divided them into 2 different 6-week groups. So one group did traditional 70% of their 1 rep max type training. So just simple training, okay? The other group did a mix of some traditional training and some isometric holds. So they didn't even really train that hard. They trained significantly less than the traditional group. They combined their traditional training with some isometrics to try to like lessen the intensity. At the end of the 6-week period, both groups had the same amount of strength gains and muscle growth. So there was little difference between the 2 groups, showing that even though like the intensity wasn't there, the newbie gains were almost the same. So what we've learned about newbie gains here is that it doesn't take much. And I don't say that to be rude or like discourage you, but it doesn't take much when you first get started. And that's really cool and encouraging at first, but then you realize like almost everyone, like the playing field is leveled, and then all of a sudden some people continue to excel, some people don't, because some people pushed really hard, some people didn't, they got the same amount of results, and then the people that didn't push hard continued to not push hard, their results stopped. The people that did push hard continued to push hard, and their results continued. Point is that you get clouded by these newbie gains. So once those end, it's really hard. You have to pay attention to this progressive overload where you have to increase your intensity or your proximity to failure. But there's also really good news for people that are new to lifting, new to training, in a way that they can even exceed the normal newbie gains. Check this out. There's something called the stretch-mediated hypertrophy response. And this could be really beneficial if you're trying to capitalize on your newbie gains. This study was published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning. And it was really cool because they took 2 groups, they had them do the same exact resistance training program. Same exact thing. The only difference is one group added 30 minutes of static stretching 2 times per week. Literally just stretching, regular like stretching the hamstrings, but good solid stretch. They were getting to the point where they were actually like burning and having, moderate discomfort from the stretch. Well, here's what they found in terms of muscle growth response. They measured leg press, leg extension, and leg curl. So leg extension, a hamstring curl, and a leg press. Okay, the results in terms of muscle growth were crazy. The group that just did the traditional lifting without the stretching, they had a 9%, 14%, and 12% increase in leg press, leg extension, and leg curl. Okay, so pretty significant, but nothing crazy. Now the group that added the stretching in, they had a 31% increase in their leg press strength compared to 12, just by adding stretching in. There's a 27% increase compared to a 14% increase in leg extension. Okay, we're talking monumental increases in overall hypertrophy, strength, just by adding in static stretching. Now, we don't see the same thing with static stretching when you are a more experienced lifter. You see a slight improvement, but when you're really in the newbie phase, you can get a lot more out of this. So what I'm saying is if you are a newbie and you're someone that's been training for a little while and your results have sort of stopped, this might be the next best thing for you to do. Add some stretching in, and then go back to your normal training before you kind of move into the next phase. It's just easy, low-hanging fruit. The next one is somewhat of an obvious one, but really important. And that is that you're not getting enough protein in, especially if you're an older person, like even north of 35, your protein synthesis and your overall like myofibrillar growth goes down as you age. But anyhow, let's take a look at a study. This is interesting. This study was published in the International Society of Sports Nutrition, and it was a large meta-analysis. Looked at 20 studies looking at strength and 23 looking at hypertrophy. So collectively looking at strength and muscle growth. What they found was that protein intake was the single largest predictor of if people built muscle or not. It did not have to do so much with strength. Protein is important for strength, but ridiculously important when it comes to building muscle. So there was absolute certainty. Like if they could look at the numbers and say that protein intake was where it should be, they could predict that that person would build muscle. That shows you how critical this is. Now there's two really important things to consider. For one, what's your leucine content look like? Like proteins that are high in leucine, right? You could do a Google search for that. But the other thing that people really forget about is the ileal digestibility. Like how can you absorb this stuff in the digestive system? So there's a couple different scoring systems. There's the DIASS score and the PDCAAS score. You want to focus on the DIAAS score. This is a protein digestibility score that has been truncated to ultimately figure out the best protein absorbability so you can really get the most out of it. So what you want to do is you could literally just go to Google or ChatGPT and you could type in like proteins with the highest DIASS score, okay? This is going to give you the proteins that have a high amount of leucine and are also highly digestible. But I'll just give you the top few. Whey protein, milk protein, beef, and eggs, okay? Those are the staples, plain and simple. Whey protein is probably one of the highest. Milk protein is also great too, a blend of whey and casein, okay? I put a link down below for the whey protein I use. If you watch the first episode of this series, you know that Bowmar Nutrition is really my go-to when it comes down to whey protein. The best tasting protein I have ever had in my life. It does not even taste like protein powder. It legit tastes like a McDonald's milkshake. I can't even explain it. And it's sweetened with allulose. It's not even using sucralose. So their strawberry milkshake flavor is usually my go-to because if I was to go to McDonald's, I would get a strawberry milkshake. This stuff, I tell you, you do not feel like you are having a protein shake. And you're getting a whopping amount of protein in one serving. So that link is down below. It's a 15% off discount link for Bowmar Nutrition's amazing whey protein. Seriously, you will never go with another protein powder. I can almost assure you this stuff is amazing tasting, at least to me. So that link, top line of the description for 15% off. The next reason you're not building muscle is you're not nearing true localized fatigue. Now we're going to talk about a way to overcome this as well. Localized fatigue is really exhausting the muscle the way that you need to be able to get that solid growth out of it. Like if you're not exhausting and you're not getting to that 1 or 2 reps in reserve type failure, then you're not going to grow realistically. And as we increase our training volume and things like that, like sometimes these things just kind of start to go away. We start relying on volume and less on proximity to failure. So let's look at the research here. There was a cool study in the Journal of Sports Science that looked at 8 weeks of resistance training. They had subjects do certain exercises all the way to failure, complete failure. And then they had other exercises and some of the same exercises go to reps in reserve at either 1 rep in reserve or 2 reps in reserve, which means almost to failure, but they could have done 1 or 2 more reps. The long and the short of it is, it was kind of a mixed bag. Like the quads, for example, actually responded slightly better with like 1 rep in reserve than going to complete failure. Whereas the calves, for example, responded better to complete failure. But we're talking negligible differences. And this might have to do with just the muscle fiber type, like calves are going to be a little bit more designed for endurance. So maybe they want to go to failure. And then maybe you've got things like the quads that are going to want to respond a little bit more with some explosiveness kind of left in the tank, right? So really important that we look at the muscle type, but not everyone's going to look at their body with a microscope and say, okay, well, I need to train my quads to failure. I need to train my biceps to almost fail. You know, things like you're not going to look at it like that. The difficult thing is as we progress through our training and we become more advanced, we need additional stimuli. It's the way it goes. We cannot continue to progress our weights the way that we want. Otherwise, we'd all be squatting 1,000 pounds. Okay. but we have to start adding different stimuli in. That's where this cool technique comes in. There was a study published in the European Journal of Sports Science, fascinating research that was looking at initial range of motion. So they were looking at knee extension or leg extension, right? So they looked at full range of motion, going through the full leg extension. They looked at initial partial, so just the partial beginning of the leg extension in the stretched position, and the top end, just very contractile range end of the knee extension. What they found with this was that the full range of motion was really solid for hypertrophy and for strength, but they actually found that the stretched range of motion elicited significant strength and muscle growth. As a matter of fact, they looked at muscle cross-sectional area, and they found that when they did the initial stretch position, like range of motion, and were able to push some strength there, they had more actual muscle growth. So what this means is that when you finish your set and you go to failure or close to failure, if you can't go all the way to failure, or even if you do go all the way to failure, pump out a few extra partial reps. This is really real stuff. It should ideally be in the stretched position though. Okay, so like for a bicep, it would be at the bottom of the movement, just that last little stretch there. So you finish all your sets and then you go, or your reps, excuse me, and then you go little partials. For leg extension, boom, finish your set, and then a couple little partials. We're talking significant hypertrophy from doing this. This is a great breakthrough way to get more muscle without really adding a lot more stress and volume to your workouts. It's like it's getting you to that proximity to failure without having to go through that full range. I really do recommend it. It's worked tremendously well for me, and it's a great plateau buster to kind of break through to a little bit more muscle growth in that next level, like new level unlocked in your muscle growth if you've been stuck for a little while. The other thing that's real is that myofibrillar growth slows down as we age. The ability to build muscle really does slow down. We have a attenuation of mTOR C1, okay? This is the mTOR that really triggers muscle protein synthesis. And there's a couple systemic things that are going on. We'll talk about a couple other things later on in this video, but really it's just the way the cookie crumbles. Like we're not having as much growth and repair and regeneration at a global level as we are when we're younger. As we get older, we also have a fewer number of satellite cells. So these are muscle stem cells. Now what kind of happens with this is normally you have a myonuclei that's donated from the satellite cell and kind of fuses to the muscle to grow more muscle. So these stem cells are kind of there existing, and when they get activated, they engage and donate a myonuclei. They donate part of themselves for that muscle to grow. So as we get older, we have less of those satellite cells. So that's just a real thing. We just aren't gonna build as much muscle just because we have less of these stem cells. A couple ways that you can increase stem cell production. Believe it or not, fasting actually can improve stem cell production. You just have to find a balance. Like if you're gonna fast, make sure you eat enough in your days when you're not fasting and get enough protein when you're not fasting, because otherwise it's counterintuitive, right? Totally counterproductive. Now, probably the most important thing that's really relevant is you have a higher threshold for leucine, which means you need more leucine, more protein coming in to cross that threshold to where you're actually building muscle. And this is a sneaky thing. It happens slowly because as we get older, we typically eat less protein. So we need to get more protein in as we get older. Now, I had Dr. Mike Ormsby on my channel, who's a protein timing researcher, and he really opened my eyes, showing that having a protein shake before bed did not disrupt sleep, did not reduce fat burning in the morning. As a matter of fact, it just increased recovery and increased muscle protein synthesis. So one simple thing you can do is if you're in your 40s, just have a protein shake before bed. No carbs added to it, just protein powder and water. Don't even do milk, just do protein. It's purely supplemental at this point. And that's all you really need to get that extra protein to cross that threshold a lot of times. Now the big one, which I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on, but that's gonna be the hormonal change, right? So for men, testosterone levels tend to decline about 1 to 2% every year after age 30. This is gonna play a big role. Testosterone is highly anabolic. So I do recommend things like Tongkat Ali is really good for that. It's really made a big difference for me. You just kind of have to watch it. So look at Tongkat Ali. Estrogen levels, believe it or not, modulating your estrogen levels. So with women, estrogen goes down. This can negatively affect things. With men, if your testosterone levels go down, sometimes your estrogen levels can be suppressed too. But the best thing that you can do is focus on modulating them. So I recommend things like DIM, D-I-M, diindolylmethane, or just consuming more in the way of cruciferous vegetables. So cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, these can help out here too. But the real big one, guys, the real big one is cortisol. As we get older, we just have more stress, we have more life coming at us. we have chronically elevated cortisol. Now, if this is the case, this is highly catabolic. These glucocorticoids that are released from cortisol or with cortisol, right? These glucocorticoids elicit atrophy by triggering protein degradation. It sounds weird, but it triggers more autophagy because your body's going through more autophagy to try to recycle and salvage what it has already. And this autophagy can sometimes break down protein. So it makes it sound like, what do you mean? Like I thought autophagy was good. It is, but it's happening all the time. And when cortisol levels are elevated, you're going to be in a stressful state where you're just breaking down more. And you're also storing more fat typically, but you're breaking down your protein. At an actual level of genetic, like translational expression, so to speak, muscle protein synthesis itself is fully suppressed, or I shouldn't say fully, but significantly suppressed. So when cortisol is high because you're stressed, you're not in a favorable time to build muscle. So there's some simple things that you can do. Vitamin C is very good for cortisol reduction. Glycine can help calm you down a little bit. So I recommend like 3 grams of glycine, particularly at night. Omega-3s not only have a powerful effect on muscle protein synthesis and what's called P70S6K phosphorylation, so the pathway of actually building muscle. Okay, that's very good, so it can help you build muscle and preserve muscle, but there's also an anti-inflammatory effect with omega-3s. So I recommend like maybe 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams of omega-3s per day, especially if you're older. Ashwagandha in the evening time has an anti-cortisol effect. It can actually regulate cortisol so that when you get up in the morning, you're a little more balanced too. This is really important. These things matter. When you're talking about cortisol, like this is how you store belly fat and ultimately break down muscle. It's not what you want, especially as you get older. Okay. Also, carbs at night. Okay, carbs will bring down cortisol if you have acute spikes. But what I recommend is if you're trying to build muscle, carbs aren't that important for building muscle. Protein is important for building muscle. Stimulus is important for building muscle. Calories to a certain degree. But if you allocate your carbs to the evening time, it'll help you sleep. It also blunts cortisol a little bit. So just allocate them to the nighttime. You're not going to gain a bunch of fat unless you're really eating garbage. A few carbs at night, like 50, 60, might be very beneficial. Now, the last reason in this case that you're not building muscle has to do with inflammation as you get older, or inflammation in general, but particularly as you get older. Because as you get older, you have muscle wastage, you have DNA breakdown, you have all of these breakdown products that are releasing in your bloodstream, and that triggers the immune system to be somewhat activated. So when you have this inflammatory cascade, like look at the image that's on the screen right now. I know it's advanced, but let me explain it briefly. At the cellular level, you have inflammation, you have protein degradation, and you have oxidative stress, ultimately turning on this like nuclear factor kappa B, which is at a very genetic level, just triggers this muscle protein degradation. It's not a pretty thing. So inflammation is impeding the signal, stopping muscle protein synthesis, making it so that not only it's harder to build muscle, but you actually do break down muscle too. The bottom line with this is there's a few things. If you're older, sometimes tuning down your training could actually reduce inflammation a little bit. But for most people, they're not doing enough exercise. But if you're watching this video, you're probably someone that works out and you're just trying to combat the stopping of the growth, right? So what you can do to kind of reduce inflammation is focus on your gut, okay? We need to focus on our gut barrier integrity. Inflammation really does, in my opinion, for most people, start in the gut. Now, in the absence of like chronic disease where you have chronic inflammation too, but localized inflammation in the gut will translate to inflammation in the body, right? So if we have more gut permeability, we are having more lipopolysaccharides, more inflammatory molecules that are secreted by gram-negative bacteria in our messed up gut biome. They secrete out of the gut and into the bloodstream, cause our immune system to turn on, which creates it like a unfavorable environment, not only for building muscle, but also a favorable environment for storing fat and for just feeling stiff and like garbage. So what I would recommend here is things like bone broth, things like collagen protein to help heal the gut. Sure, collagen is good for the joints, but really darn good for the gut, okay? I would also recommend, whenever you can, avoiding things like polysorbate 60, polysorbate 20, anything that says polysorbate. Okay, any sort of emulsifier, I would recommend limiting. I know you're like, I'm trying to build muscle, I need my protein, I need however I can. If we have gut inflammation, this could be problematic at a much deeper level. So what I would recommend is going for, if you're looking at a food, if it says something like soy or sunflower lecithin, that's something you would want to opt for instead of like polysorbates. Now you're only going to find this in like processed foods anyway, so hopefully this isn't a big part of your diet to begin with. But the best ways that you can really take care of the gut is by modulating the gut bacteria within your gut too, right? So soluble fiber, things like just polyphenols, right? I don't recommend having a ton of fiber. I recommend getting your fiber from polyphenols, which are strong in the prebiotic sense. I recommend taking care of the gut mucosal layer. So you do this by increasing glycine, increasing collagen, increasing gelatin intake, increasing your bone broth intake, things like that that are actually good for healing the gut. And one of the most powerful things you can do, even if you're building muscle, is have these clear defined gaps in between meals that allow for gut motility and gut repair. The gut repairs itself when you're not eating. So you need to repair the gut if you want to get inflammatory systems under control. Now, inflammation is complex, so please do not think that this is like a take it to the bank way to reduce inflammation. It is just a thing that stands in the way of building muscle. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.